and hello everybody to today's webinar on the top priorities for CFOs in 2023. My name is Edward Kim, and I'm the Director of Sales here for North America here at Spendflo. Now, in 2023, CFOs are facing a wide range of challenges and opportunities as they seek to navigate an evolving business landscape. In this webinar, we're going to explore a couple things, like many key priorities for CFOs that they should be focusing on to ensure that their organizations are positioned for success, and make sure that we have best practices in place. Now, our expert speakers will share their insights and best practices drawn on their extensive experience working with CFOs and finance teams across various industries. We'll also have time for a Q&A session at the end and also throughout the whole entire session. We want to make this interactive. We want to make sure that we give a chance for everybody to gain something that you want to learn. Now, feel free to submit your questions throughout it when we prompt you. Now, thank you for joining today, and let's get started. I'm going to pass this over to Sid to introduce himself. Sid.
Thanks, Ed, for the great introduction. Hey, folks, I'm Sid. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Spendflo. So prior to starting Spendflo, I used to run the business operations team for a company called Volta Charging. And during my time there, my CFO didn't like me too much because I spent too much money on SaaS. That was when the idea of Spendflo really came about. She used to walk up to me every quarter and say, Sid, I think you're spending too much money on SaaS. Go figure out what it is and go carve by half. So that's when we started Spendflo. So Spendflo is the one single place for you to actually buy, manage, and optimize all of your SaaS spends. And we do that with guaranteed savings. So that's a quick introduction about us and what we do. But I'm super excited to have Nicolas here as well. But Nicolas, please, would love your introduction for the audience, and then we can get started.
Yeah, thank you, Sid. Hello, everybody. So I'm Nicolas. I am a thought leader on finance. I share every day what I learned all of my career about finance. Right now, I have 115,000 followers on LinkedIn. And I came today because a lot of people come to me and ask me, I want to be a CFO, so I'm a finance manager. How should I become a CFO? Or they are new CFOs, or even like older CFOs. They're asking, okay, how should I make the most impact this year with my team? And that's why we decided together today to talk about that, because the year has already started. I guess everybody is already working on their objectives or finalizing them. And now actually on what should you focus on? And I hope to bring you all of the experience I have, everything I share with thousands of people I talk with over the last weeks about this, and happy to go directly in this topic.
Awesome.
Oh, great. Let's go ahead and get started then. Well, Nicolas, what are top priorities for CFOs today?
Yeah, so if we can go to the next slide,
yep.
Where basically, again, so for me, after like I discussed with the CFOs and the different organizations, there are 10 priorities. And basically these priorities, I will group them in 3 categories. The first one, we have worked the last years a lot on finance transformation. If I remember, 7 years ago, I started as a finance transformation leader in my new job. And now we are 7 years after that. So I think it started in the years 2010 that people talk about finance transformation. So now we are 13 years after that. And it's not anymore about starting finance transformation. It's about completing that. And how do you reap benefits of these initiatives? And that's where you need now to look at it really with your critical eyes, because the world has changed. Some companies don't have the growth they had before. Some initiatives cost way more than what you plan, especially some SaaS companies increased their price by 2 or 3 times or changed the model of pricing. So the business case is not the same anymore. And what I will recommend you as a leader in your organization is ask to review the initiatives, look at what really brings benefits, and everything that is like stealing the last year where nothing is happening.
Yeah,
you need to kill the initiatives and move on with the one that really brings you something. So
Nice.
that's the first bucket. The second one is everything about uncertainty. The world has changed since COVID. The people don't work the same way. The prices are different. The supply chain is also different. And you still have, as a CFO or finance leader, you still need to navigate and make sure that the company reaches the target. So for that, you need a better budget because you need to plan better and have better scenarios, possibilities. You need also to have the right talents because tools are different, people work differently. So how do you attract them and how do you keep them? And now also AI is coming. So how can you use AI tools to leverage your resource in your team? And the last point on, I would say on uncertainty, how can you include in your contracts, in your cost, and really with your suppliers and clients, how can you include clauses that cover the price changes? And the last part is how do you finance your growth, knowing that the financing is way different right now. The money is not easy money anymore. It's really hard to get money, or it costs way more. And how, if you don't have the growth, or even if I would say you are in a crisis, how do you limit your cost? How do you look at your structure? What can you do? How do you look at your suppliers and also the vendors that you use? How can you challenge in these costs? How can you also review your structure to make sure that you, at the end, you reach your competitivity? And those three buckets, you need now, after, to go with your team, to go with also your management team, and look at what you can do within your company for each of these buckets.
Makes sense. And do you just to add on to that, right, Nicolas, like you those three buckets that you just spoke about, one of the major things that we see, like we have a bunch of personal stories because we work with finance leaders and CFOs, and we have real world customer stories of these as well. One of the biggest levers that we saw was in the last couple of months, we saw great finance leaders essentially start cutting those experiments, right, to make sure that you're actually aligning your cost to your growth structure. If you know when the cost is, do you know where your cost is? You can actually align that to what your growth looks like as well. So they started looking at all the experiments, starting to cut down on those. And that by itself is streamlined the way they operate. There's less management overhead, communications overhead. There's a lot of changes that you can actually see. And finance is actually the best team to do this because the cost, what you're spending on it, what you're actually making from it, everything lies with finance over there. That was one of our customers and one of the best finance leaders that I've actually worked with did that as soon as he knew that his growth is going to slow down even a tad bit. Those experiments got cut very, very quickly. That they pulled out of some regions, they pulled out of some customer segments, though it might hurt them in the short term. Though it might like look like, you know, it's a very crude decisions that they made in the short term, it actually preserved a lot of cash for them so that they can go in and reinvest in things that are actually working. We saw one of our
on that, you're right. You say that right. Finance is going to be the first that will see cost problem or growth problems. And okay, if you don't escalate enough, and if you don't escalate quickly enough, then you are going also to bring your organization at risk. So it's your role really, like you said, to act on that and organize and bring everybody together and really show the reality to people, show the economic reality, because if they don't know, they will not act. So you have I will say the obligation to teach and educate people on these problems.
Yeah, and most people don't realize in the last couple of years, they haven't really tied these experiments to metrics that you can actually measure. What's the cost of this? We're in a very different interest rate environment today, so we can't spend the money the way that we did. And finance realizes that the most, right? Like than anybody else. The second thing that we saw happen were that finance leaders took a much greater role in leading organizational change. right? Like especially because with all these if you're cutting experiments and you're reinvesting in other places, that requires massive amounts of change management. So one of the best tips that we saw one of our finance leaders do is they actually sponsored a champion inside every department to help with the change management. Like they had one person who was kind of like their sponsor inside those departments. So somebody inside sales, somebody inside marketing, somebody inside customer success, who could actually bring together these cross-functional projects, and they could run as a cross-functional team. So just having someone, that person's job can be something else, but they can be the volunteer to actually work on this cross-functional project. We saw one of our customers do that really, really well. And just the last and third tidbit is that folks also started automating a lot of the finance workflow using technology as well, right? Like, so there are two key workflows from our perspective, and even finance, like it's order to cash, right? Which is, how do I book that order and how do I get it to cash? And the second is procure to pay, right? So those are the two major processes that people see. One actual major tidbit that we saw is order to cash processes always change. They evolve over a period of time because customers, the way they buy, customers, the way they actually collect, like it kind of evolves. So one of the finance leaders, what they actually did is they put a really stringent, like, or a flexible kind of procure to pay process first. And then they started working on order to cash, because what they realized is if I can at least control my outflow first, then I can start optimizing my inflows later. So that was another tidbit that one of our finance leaders actually put in place. So just for the audience as well. So we have like more tidbits for those, but I'll keep sprinkling it in as we speak.
Yeah, and on procure to pay, it's also where you will see the most solutions available and the most mature.
Yes.
And you can also benchmark really easily. You can look at how many invoice do you process now per employee, so per people working in the payables department.
Yeah.
And then you can look at other companies who implemented the tool.
Yeah.
So invoice recognition through artificial intelligence and machine learning. How do they recognize it, process it, and use just the robot for that? And at the end, how many invoice per employee it is. And you can see a factor of 3 to 10.
Yeah.
And for you, that's your target if you want to implement that.
Exactly. That's a great way to measure. And that's the ROI. Like, it actually is how you measure the ROI for your technology investments, right? That we were talking about. It's a great way.
If you had 10 people and after you're only 3, then it's the business case is easy to calculate.
Yeah.
Sid, now when you start looking at cost reductions, how do you go about it?
It's a good question, right? Like, so it's always tricky. The first impetus that, especially as like any finance leader, or that for that matter, any executive, you have a line of sight to what your growth looks like for the next year, at least some form of a line of sight. So if your growth doesn't match what your present cost structure is, or your forecasted growth doesn't match it, then that's when you need to start looking at cutting costs, right? Like that's the first impetus universally that you need to start looking at. And that implies monthly sales. Like you review those sales, you review what's actually happening. You have a really good understanding of what your pipeline looks like, or what does the customer demand look like. If you're a consumer in your consumer space, or in a B2B space, you understand that as well. So that's the first impetus to actually start looking at cutting costs. But there are very quick ways to actually do it as well, right? So the first thing that this is another example from a customer as well. They started partnering with vendors across the board, like partnering with other companies to either co-develop, co-market, co-sell, do everything, right? Like it's like twice the number of leads, half the cost, right? You don't need to go spend all that cost on acquiring a customer, or for that matter, for servicing a customer. It's okay to share, right? You'd rather share and build a deeper relationship with the customer and more value if you're able to partner to do this. So we saw one of our customers really double down on that as a strategy, right? And then the second thing that we actually saw was, especially for a lot of companies in the space, real-time visibility into just their cash and what's actually coming in and what's actually going out however small you are to however large you are, just cash-based accounting is another strategy to just put into place, because like if you know what your cash position is, it's much easier for you to plan and forecast. So that's something that we also saw one of our other finance leaders to look at, and if you just start optimizing that entire how you buy things and who you partner with to buy things from, be it your vendors or your entire procurement process or your entire procure to pay process, it's very easy to go and optimize. And actually, Nicolas has a wonderful way to actually present that. I'll pass it on to Nicolas now.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we can show quickly
The slide.
The slides. And on reduction cost, I have two things to say. So first, the theory, so we can show it's basically, that's based on an article which is, it's not new, it's something from Harvard Business School. And it shows basically that depending on how much cost you need to reduce, there are certain level of initiatives you can implement. The first level is, I will say, something that every department can reduce. So their travel cost, their consulting cost, is basically like the easy 10% to grab, where it doesn't change anything in the company. But if you need more, you need to look at, okay, how to optimize processes, or how to eliminate, I would say, the fat in some of the departments, and how to reduce the task of some departments that they just look at doing what is necessary, especially the support function cost. And the last one, if you are really in need to change drastically, then you need to change your organization. You need to stop, like you say, Sid, in some countries, you need to stop being there. You need also to stop some products where you are losing, maybe you are making a small margin, but it brings the organization so much cost because you need expert, you need another site, you need a production for that. So that's where, based on the level, you need more courage if you want more cost reduction. And we can stop sharing because I want to share one story. So 3 years ago, I was nominated head of finance for a manufacturing site of 400 people doing around 100 million euros of revenue. And basically, we were in a crisis because there was a lot of competition. Our prices were increasing every year due to the inflation of salaries. And my boss said, okay, either we reduce our prices and we keep our market share, or we die. And so everybody took that really seriously, and he asked me to take the lead on that. So what we did is drumbeat meetings where we pull out the management team. We looked at, okay, what I did before that, I prepared a lot of benchmarking. I benchmarked our site in comparison with other sites from the group, saying, okay, in HR, in comparison with headcount, do we have more or less cost? In comparison with a similar site, finance, in comparison of sales, are we above or are we below? So benchmarking yourself will really show you where do you have problems. And when you know where you have problems, then you are going to look at it. Okay, what can we do to change? And you need to look everywhere. Obviously, like you start with the big chunk of cost and you go down, but you will have a list of 20, 30 initiatives. And then each meeting, you need to show progress on each of the initiatives. And you will have a column showing, okay, what is the potential? And then you will have another column saying how much you could already save. And that's a good way to make it practical and to bring everybody together to show that some departments already have success. So you also encourage success. You show that something is happening. And others will also go with you because they know that they have to work if you want to stay competitive. And so what we did is we reviewed our maintenance contracts. We reviewed all of our support function costs. If you work in a group where you get a lot of overheads from the group, then you go and negotiate. We negotiated and say, okay, you charge us for this service but actually we need only that from it. So just like stop everything doing from us, we'll do it ourselves for 10 times less the price, and at least we'll save money. And you need, again, to take people with you to explain your problems, and then you will get help. Also with your suppliers want that you survive. They don't want to lose you. So if you explain that to stay alive and to stay competitive, you need to work together, then you will get results.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. You know, we also got a Q&A that's on topic too from Stanley. He asked, how do you manage cash flows month to month when revenues are Michael?
When revenues are what? Sorry?
Miggle or Michael, M-I-G-A-L?
I think it's
Or minimum.
no.
Yeah. So first, what is important with cash flow, you need to have a cash flow planning. Because if you don't know what is going to happen the next 6 months, then you'll have really soon a liquidity problem, and you cannot finance your stocks, you cannot pay your employees. So you need to know if this problem is coming. If you have a contract where it's only coming in 1 year that you need to have the cash, you need to know it. If some clients are paying late, or if you are delivering late, then you need to know that really fast, to go to the bank, to go to your group, to get money. And companies who don't do that, they put themselves at huge risk to get basically a liquidity problems. And even though they are profitable, if they don't collect the cash and have to pay everything in advance, then they will go bankrupt. So at the end, if the revenue is too small, anyway, they have to look at their cost, because they cannot continue to spend out the money. But you need to grow your revenue to go back to a balance. But then you need also to make sure that your cash in comes and your cash out at the same time. And actually, you should have the cash in before the cash out. But without plan, you cannot work on that. So implement that, and then after follow and explain to people what is the consequence if you are late in production, if you give to your customer too many months to pay, and if you pay too much in advance to your suppliers. Show the picture to people to show them, look, that is the consequence for the company if we work like that. And then bring everybody together to go on a cash where you bring a cash positive.
Okay. Now, I think that's a good segue to the next section too. In this current market, Nicolas, what are key metrics and KPIs that you monitor?
And so we looked at structure cost or overhead, and if your company is growing a lot, you tend to think our overhead is not important. What you need to look at is that your overhead don't increase as fast as your revenue. Let's imagine a company where you have 10% overhead and they have a 20% growth. Well, you should not have 20% growth in overhead. You should reduce to at least half of it. And if your company on top is not growing, but your overhead are growing, then you also need to look at that. So overhead on sales, that's one of the most important metric, and everybody can understand that because they can see that if you go in the future and you always spend more and more on overhead, that at the end, nothing will be left in the company. So that's one point. Another point that I like, which is really simple, is how much revenue do you do by headcount? And is these metrics growing? Because you know that the headcounts and salary costs are going to cost more and more. So if you are not growing that, you also you are going to have problems. And often, if you don't explain to employees, look, you have to bring 150,000 or 200 or 300 every year to make yourself valuable, then they are also not in the, I would say in the process of thinking, okay, how to make more sales, how to be more competitive. And just to bring them these metrics makes everything really like simple and easy to understand for the organization. And the last one we talked about cash is the cash conversion cycle.
Yeah.
So how do you convert your sales to cash? And what you want is obviously to have the lowest as possible, because if you have, let's say, 100 day, that means that you will need 100 days from your sales to get your cash. And so I have some posts about that. It's a bit more complicated than what I just said, but it's really, you need to have the lowest cash conversion as possible.
Yeah. I think I'll just add to that as well, right? Like, so for different stages of companies, obviously your metrics will differ. But in essence, the three things that you really need to worry about today is making sure that you keep your existing customers really, really happy, right? Like, you don't want to go spend more money to go acquire a new customer when your existing customer isn't that happy. So making sure that you have, I mean, in the SaaS world, it's net retention, but in the non-SaaS world as well, it's just the repeat business, right? Like, what is that percentage of repeat business that you're getting for that particular customer? The second thing that we also look at is a bunch of smart folks also look at it is like, what's your what does your growth rate look like compared to last year and like same quarter of last year, right? So it like I said, right, like Nicolas was mentioning, it's benchmarking. So benchmarking all of your metrics against your own metrics from last year, from a quarter on quarter on a month to month basis, is also very, very important. So you can look at the variation in that data and how that's actually trending. That's one. Second is build that community of finance leaders for yourself, right? Like get connected to Nicolas, get connected to folks like him. They're very similar minded folks who want to share and learn. And when you're able to get access to what do the metrics look like and what are the benchmarks for these metrics, that's the single best way to honestly look at it as well, right? Like, how do you actually look at those metrics? Because standalone, they might look good, they might look bad. You don't know what good or bad looks like. The only way you know good or bad is to actually measure it against your community of finance leaders as well. So building and being part of that community is very, very important. And a key to success over here as well. I think there's a quick question, Nicolas is saying more. I can just quickly answer it and then pass it along to you. What are some cost reducing strategies that can be used by the company to achieve profitability target? That's the question. So best way to go solve for that, like what Nicolas is mentioning, is that cash in is greater than cash out on a month-on-month basis, right? Honestly, that's the irrespective type of business it doesn't matter. But the best way to do that is one, cut those experiments, cut anything that is not affecting your core metrics as a business, right? If it's not affecting and it's been going on for too long and you have cost structure that's kind of maintaining it, it's really hard to remove things and cut things. But honestly, that's the quickest way, right? And I think, Ed, if you want to just put up that that slide again for folks that Nicolas, I think Nicolas, you could do a much better job than me and just explaining it well, just to reaffirm that slide. Ed, do you want to just put it up? Yep. So yeah.
So basically what you can do if it's something you need really fast is stop all of the spending that are not critical. And for that, we have seen that during COVID, where companies didn't know how the year will be. And a lot of companies implemented contingency plans. I also had to implement one. And what they ask you is, okay, one, reduce travel costs. Like don't travel anymore, because you can do business without traveling. We have seen that. And only the critical one needs to be approved by top management. Second, everything external, all of the external services that are not critical, stop it. Then the third one, if you have flexibility in your staff, there are some mechanisms where people are in limited contract. So you need to stop that where it's not critical. You have also, we have that in Germany, for example. You can use some models to explain that you have less work. And because you have less work, you can send people home. and then you don't have to pay them, and the government is going to take a part of the salary, so that for employees, they still get their money, maybe a bit less, but they don't work. So those are mechanisms that you can do in emergency. But that works only 6 months to navigate when you don't know where you go. Once you know if it's a situation that lasts longer, you need to start, like you said, a stopping experiment, automate processes. Everybody who is going to retirement, to find a way to not replace them and stop some of the work that was not necessary, and give the remaining work to the people who are already there. And the last one is look at your organization. I don't know if you know the concept of management layers and management span. So look at how other organization, or even within your organization, look how many employees do you have per manager, and how many layers is there between the CEO and the technicians, or the officers, or the people working in production. And that will give you an indication of which department you need to have savings and where you need to reorganize, and which other departments are already lean and where there is less to do.
Yeah. Actually, there's a related question as well, Nicolas, I think from Trin. Do you want to just, Ed, you want to just read it out?
Yes. Which metric can apply for control costs in manufacturer?
Okay. So first, your hourly rate, actually. Your hourly rate is an indication of your efficiency and your cost structure. If your hourly rate is increasing every year, that means that each hour that your person are going to work is going to cost more. And why it costs more? Well, first, the people, they get more salary. So if you don't make them more efficient, then your product is going to cost more. The second aspect, which is not hourly rate, but it's non-quality cost. And non-quality cost is basically, if you start producing, let's say, a machine or equipment, and at the end, somebody does the quality test and say, no, this one is not good, we have to scrap, it has to go to the trash. Well, you just lose the whole value of this equipment that you produce. So how do you have process in place that this doesn't happen, or happen like really like lower and lower? And so what you can do is, instead of doing this test at the end, you can start test at the beginning. If you have problem with your suppliers, then work with your supplier to get better quality. If in your organization you still produce while there is a problem happening and other departments don't know that, maybe the product on which they are working is at the end not going to be valid because there was a problem before them, then you still lose money. So you need to implement those initiatives to rethink and bring sensibility to people that they don't have just to be efficient, they have to produce quality.
Makes sense.
One other question came in is, in your opinion, what are the recent technologies that we can invest in to generate savings?
Maybe Sid, I think
Yeah.
you can explain.
I can take that as well. So, I mean, so you look at the cost structure of most organizations now. Obviously, payroll is the number one spend. There's also contracted employees and just employees on your payroll, and versus there's also contractual employees as well, which is also a large portion of spend. And then you have marketing costs, and then you have facilities, and then you probably have your SaaS and all your cloud spends as well, right? So like according to like even what Nicolas mentioned, right, there's a 10, 20 and 30%. So I'll address it in that way, right? Your biggest value that you can actually deliver is in your cloud and SaaS. It's the 30% you can actually deliver incremental quick value to your organization. So investing in tools that that help you get you the right price, get you the right contract, making sure that you're monitoring all your spend and your usage of these tools. That's like the it's like the strategic activity, like very low effort, high output type of activity. The second thing is actually managing all your headcount and non-contractual employees as well. Just putting per hour costs that Nicolas was talking about, even from manufacturing. A lot of folks use consulting organizations to for labor as well. So managing all your headcount for contractual employees, optimizing that headcount is the second biggest lever that we see inside organizations as well, right? So because it doesn't really affect your employee base directly, it's your contractual employee base, and you can also measure ROI because they charge by the hour. What is the hour per cost? What is the work that they're actually doing? Is the value of the work that they're actually deploying? So that's two of the, so investing in like a headcount management or a contractual employee management software is actually become, the ROI of that has also become really high. And the second is investing in like a tool to actually benchmark all your vendor pricing, your SaaS pricing, or you just monitoring all your spend on all your vendors is the two of the easiest low effort, high output type activities to actually just do.
Yeah, and it's something really like when we talk about licenses, I've seen like new prices coming from vendors, and you feel like handcuffed when you get the new invoice or the new quote. And I think companies alone, they are not expert in managing the SaaS. They are not even like they don't have processes for that. You can have teams that order the same license, and maybe like one team will order 10 for 5 employees because the price of 10 is good, and they might think, okay, I will have maybe other employees in the future. And the team next to them will do the same, and they're also 5. So the company will pay for 20 license for 10 people. And just because it's not organized like that, it's new for companies to have the SaaS model. It's new to be also handcuffed with those the tools that are there, and you cannot take them out anymore because you have already changed your process for them. So that's something you need to get help and look at the solutions that exist to help you on that.
Yeah. And I'll also say, make sure it's important, whatever technology you're investing in, right? If you want to generate savings or whatever it does, just make sure you have to ensure it has a return on investment. So you always have net positive gain. That's the most important thing, especially if you're investing in new technologies, right? Well, one last question, all right, before we have about 5 minutes left. You know, Nicolas, what are the top skills that a modern finance leader, must possess in today's market?
Yeah. So in your question, there is modern. And I want actually to answer in this modern, because for me, what is changing now is that you don't have to manage only people. You have to manage robots as well. And so if you want to, I would say, to stay competitive, to be irreplaceable, and even to be better than your peers and other CFOs or other finance managers, well, get good at managing robots, because you will unleash a lot of potential for your organization. And also you will bring your processes and your people to something modern, something where your people will get excited to work with new technology. And so you leading the charge as a leader and showing, yeah, I want to invest in new technology. I want to learn. I want to know how to use them. One example, if Power BI is something now coming everywhere, but I had the experience that the leader of organization made himself a dashboard. So when he did himself a dashboard, everybody under were like, okay, I have to go on my Power BI skills. I have to know how to do a dashboard myself. And that's how you lead by example. And you show to your organization is not only like keywords or I would say like theoretical project that we have to do. No, it's concrete. The manager is using it and wants you to use it as well, because they know that is beneficial for their team, and is also you get faster results, you can decide better. Because if the manager can go directly in the dashboard and get the information, he doesn't have to make a team of 10 people working for him. Instead, he goes to them and say, I saw this problem, can you work on it? Instead of asking them, okay, show me the figures, and then I come back to you in 1 week, and once we are done, maybe we are going to look at the problems. No, this time is over. The processing time has to be close to zero, and the decision time and to work on problems has to increase. That's how now the modern leader has to be, and how you need to change if you are not there yet.
Yeah, I'll just add like a quick, I think you summarized it really well, Nicolas. So just one piece that I think example I use is generally CFOs used to be looked at like the referees, right? Like you're actually blowing the whistle at the last minute before something needs to happen. But the CFOs actually have to become like the point guards. They need to be able to provide the right data and the right tools to the right stakeholders at the right amount of time to make that slam dunk happen, right? To make that decision happen. So CFOs are actually enablers. They might not be the right people to make the decisions, but they're the right people to empower the stakeholders to make the decisions, right? So one of the major things is like quick things like, having being self-serve in the sense that you can create your own analytics, get comfortable with the technology that you're using, become not just an expert in finance, but actually look at yourselves as like, hey, how do I become the business leader? So if the CFO was not functioning, can I actually technically step in to do the job, right? Do I have enough context to do that job? That's the way that I've seen great CFOs operate, and what I look for as well. Like, so just as a tidbit. But we have a couple of questions. I think more for you, Ed. You can like call them out as well.
Yeah. The first one is weekly cash flow forecast for 16 weeks better than monthly forecast?
For 16 weeks, so it's like almost a quarter, or more than a quarter. Well, I think what you need is first start with monthly. Like, don't start with weekly if you don't have your monthly forecast done. But however, the weekly forecast can help you if you have banking facilities that are really, really tight. So first, don't try to make it too detailed if the big picture, you don't get it. Because changing every week, working on that, you are going to monopolize one person on that, and you just need that one person that doesn't make the call, and then your weekly forecast is gone. If there is one contract that it delays by a few days. So having rather a monthly view is already better than, I would say, 90% of the organization. What you can do is automate your reports that it comes weekly. If you have payment dates, if you have this, if you know the salary are going to be paid in this week, if you know that I will say that you have a big financing coming this week, you can do that, but make it automated and don't make it too manual. One is about monthly or quarterly, and especially at the end, because if we look at the December 29th or the January 3rd, well, the cash is not going to come in the same period. And so there you need to be more careful at the last week of your quarter. And because some of the payments have 60 days or 30 days, you need to think like 2 months in advance. Okay, if I don't invoice now, I'm not going to get my cash end of December. So you need always, that's why think first in month, because it will show you the problems. And then once you have that good, and you have like ask to have a view by months, then you can automate the weekly. But I will not spend too much time on the weekly.
Yeah. I think just another like skill set that we wanted to also mention. Actually, it's the next question as well, right? Kamba had this question on how are CFOs going to deal with ChatGPT and AI, right? So one of the I think this is like a common question that we get. So I'll take a stab at it, Nicolas, before you go. One thing that we see as a really crucial skill set with finance leaders is picking the right partner, right, to actually work with, to like you might not be the expert at everything, right? Like the scope of finance is essentially increased. So picking the right partner to decide, okay, I'm going to go with this partner and they can make my life easier in this particular section, and then I can concentrate on a particular set of topics, right? So even with like ChatGPT or AI or anything else, right? Like if that's something that you're passionate about and you want to really concentrate on, make sure you offload some other things from your plate before you jump into it. Just like as a tidbit, because if you go into that and you go run all your other projects, you're not going to have enough time. But one of the key things that we see is like simple pieces of AI that are being used is like just invoice processing, right? Like I think Nicholas, you had a great example of the ROI for a source to pay tool, right? Which is I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, actually, it's really the timing is perfect, because what I did is let me show you. I did launch this weekend a guide of ChatGPT for finance.
Oh, nice.
So, do you see the screen? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's go full screen. And it's basically what I did is I use all of what I know about finance the last 15 years when I worked in finance. And I went into ChatGPT and made use cases about, for example, how do you make a standard operating procedures for reconciliation? How do you get an instruction to get information from SAP? How do you get formulas for Excel? How do you write emails? How do you prepare a budget? How do you ask other departments for input? So all of that, I put that in my guide, and you can see, so there are around 22 use cases. So for productivity, so how to use Excel, how to create checklists, how to use Power BI, write emails, make standard operating procedures, create agenda for a meeting. For accounting, how do you make dunning letters, so reminders? How do you prepare impairment memo? For financial analysis, how to use it for financial figures, to make a presentation. And it's basically, I will show you one example. So here, for example, well, let's make it more finance. So I ask him, I'm working in finance and I need an extensive checklist for the booking of accruals. Then ChatGPT is generating for me a checklist of what I have to do every month for my accruals. And you see, it's quite complete. Like it talks about the payroll expenses. It talks about reconciliating with the bank. It talks about also making sure that the accrued expense from last month have been booked and there is not a double account. And that really is going to make you way much more productive and also help your teams, I would say, consult ChatGPT to make sure that they didn't forget something and that they can go faster to solve a problem. And I'll come back. So as a CFO, there is two ways. Either you ban ChatGPT or either you encourage ChatGPT. And you need to be really careful on which side you want to be. And for me, banning ChatGPT is like banning the spreadsheet when it started, like on the computer for 20, 30 years, and saying people, no, you still have to use your calculator or you have to do everything manually. Yeah. You can go, you have to choose your team. And so I go on the team that I want to embrace ChatGPT. Of course, it's going to work only if you keep your brain active, that you are really critical about what comes, because it's still a computer. And if a computer has been trained on something wrong, it will give you something wrong. But if you start training him and explaining, what is right, and actually I didn't mean it like that, like show me rather that or correct that, then it's a powerful tool and it's the best assistant you can get. And that's why I spent the last week working on that really hard. And I made this guide. So if you want to get it, just go on my LinkedIn page. You can get the guide. I make it really, really cheap for everybody. And it's amazing. Like once you start, the use cases are enormous. But And that's where we need to not forget, use your brain, be critical, because you cannot go to your boss with a ChatGPT procedure. And if somebody says, but that's wrong inside, and just blame ChatGPT, it's still your own responsibility. You need to review, you need to use all of what you know, what should be, to make sure that the output is yours and is a professional output that brings value.
Yeah, that's actually a great segue as well, Nicolas. I think what we wanted to really talk about is like just one last, like, you know, a poll as well. We spoke about how benchmarks, how you need to actually think about all of this, right? Like, so if folks are looking to essentially benchmark their present SaaS spend, and if you're looking at ways to actually optimize it, do let us know. And we'll just throw out a poll right now. And if you're interested, let us know. And then our team will be in touch as well. In the meantime, if you folks have any other questions, please feel free to like ask, and we'll be able to answer. And obviously, Nicolas, you can find him on LinkedIn, and he's super active on there. And if you need anything from us, we're always available on email as well. So Ed, any other closing remarks from your end as well?
No, I think there's one more last question. I think is it Pratik? He had a question about how to initiate journey of automating processes. What are the key enables required to identify such processes, and any example you can quote to explain?
Yes. So what is important is the tools are not going to solve your problems if you don't change your processes. Just bringing a tool is going to highlight also problems. If people don't communicate, if you don't standardize, and if you don't have also clarity from the management of what is needed, then the tool is not just going to show that there are problems, and everybody is going to blame the tool for the problems because it's easier than blaming themselves. But to make a tool work, you need to standardize. A computer only works binary, even if now they train themselves and they can better adapt. But if you have 100 ways to record an invoice, you can forget to automate. You need to come back to 1, 2, or 3 ways. Once you have done that, then you bring a tool and you automate everything. But don't make it the other way around. Don't try to automate 100 ways to record an invoice. If you have a reporting for headcounts, where depending if the group is asking that, or if depending of if your management is asking another view, if head of department was something else, you are going also to lose yourself in like trying to have different parameters to produce this reporting. Instead of that, just make one reporting that works for everybody, that works with drill down and filters to accommodate the different needs, but don't have different standards, don't have different definitions. You need to align, and there you can use the power of the tool for that. So that would be the process. And how to identify these processes, look at where you have huge volume, but really a level of standardization. So invoice processing is the best one to start with. Then after the cash collection and to issue invoice. The reporting is also a good process because a lot of people spend time on reporting, and you need to educate to use existing reports and use dashboards. And the last one I would say is everything around your ERP. There are a lot of modules that can come and replace, I would say, manual work that we're doing in Excel.
All right. Well, that'll conclude this webinar. Awesome content, and appreciate everything, Nicolas and Sid.
Awesome.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, folks. Thanks, Nicolas. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.